Friends, welcome back to the Film Alchemist podcast, the show where we look at movies we love, break them apart, to find out what gives them their magique. I'm your host, Josh Griffey, joined tonight, this Friday, for a very special double feature presentation by my longtime friend and co-host,
Mike Cloud.
Mike Cloud. Why don't you go ahead and get on in here, Doc? You gotta let these people
no
hear
one's
the
ever
voice.
accused me of being too quiet.
I'm sure once we start screaming at each other, the volume will be great.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So as always, if you like the show, please take a second to leave us ratings and reviews, especially on the Apple Podcast app. That helps us out enormously. You can also see our faces on YouTube. That's a Nerd Alchemist, plural, with an S at the end. A lot of other cool content coming for you on that channel soon enough. Mike will probably be a part of some of that too, man. So stay tuned. And find us on our socials. We're really active on all social media. Twitter, we're at Film Alchemist 1, the number 1. You can find us there. Hit us up with any ideas for movies you'd like to see covered, double features, guest, or month-long themes. Anything you want, we want to hear it. As you guys know, our next month, the pod takes the case, right? So we've got 4 movies where people are trying to solve a mystery, right? We got a killer list. The Golden Child with Eddie Murphy. One of my all-time... I'm going to make the case to you guys that it's actually the best Eddie Murphy detective movie. Better than 48 Hours and Beverly Hills Cop. Stay tuned for that.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah. I got one. Clive Barker's Lord of Illusion. Scott Bakula, Wild Awesome Flick. Zodiac and Brick, man. So we got some really good stuff coming for you next month. But tonight, we're here for a very special occasion, man. The Color Out of Space dropped this week. I saw this movie in theaters, and I fucking flipped, right? It's like, it's everything I love, right? It's Nick Cage. And a really weird Nick Cage role, because it's Nick Cage doing his approximation of what he thinks a normal dad is like.
His character was so weird. I don't know if it was like written that way or if it's Nick Cage trying to pretend to be normal,
right?
Which is not normal at all.
Essentially, if Nick Cage plays it as an alien who's never seen a dad before, but then watch like TGI Friday and is like, I can do this. And I love that, right? And then it's the Lovecraft universe, which I've always said is the last great untapped multiverse for movies that hopefully we're going to get into. So because of that, I called up Mike, who loves these kind of movies too, and I was like, we're going to do a double feature. And Alex had the great idea that Slither was actually a perfect pairing with Color Out of Space. Because there's a lot of really good movies that would pair with this one, but I think Slither's a really interesting choice to pair with it.
Yeah, the only other one I would suggest is In the Mouth of Madness, kind of pairs with that. But yeah, as far as like creature feature, perfect.
This is our creature feature double feature, right? So we're gonna start with Slither, guys. So we'll do this one, and then you'll also have available at the same time The Color Out of Space, man. So that's a long intro. Enough of that. Let's get to Slither. So, Cloud, you had told me you had never seen Slither before. This is kind of one of those movies that has a cult following, I would say. I'm not sure why this didn't become one of the pantheon, like, great horror movies. Especially I think this movie came out when? 2009? 2006, right.
Yeah.
So, of the 2000 to 2010 range, right? This is definitely one of the best horror movies.
Oh, yeah, like, because I'd always read so many places of how good of a movie this was, and I'm glad you asked me to watch it, because it's one of those things I always said, I'm going to watch that, I need to watch it, I'll get to it later, I never would have. But I think one of the things is from what I expected it to be to what it really was, are two completely different things. Like, I remember hearing about that movie. I remember the previews, and it's like advertised as like this like slugs zombie like invasion of the body snatchers type of movie. And yeah, there's that element to it.
That's definitely part of the movie.
That's part of it, but it's like basically almost like a mashup of like many different horror genres, like creature feature and like that like 80s alien invasion, like all the small town, a meteor comes into town or hits. Messes everything up, but and then it has like the body snatchers and the zombie aspect to it, and almost even just kind of makes fun of those genres and makes fun of itself along the way.
Right,
it's like so much like good stuff just boom like thrown into one. That's such an amazing movie.
Right, and I don't even know. See, I think it's not making fun of, but it feels like the best love letter. Right, it reminds me of a love letter to like drive-in 80s horror genre. Right. Like any horror movie that you would go to in the 80s, like, you know, just literally anything. Invaders from Mars, Chopping Mall, any kind of weird genre. It's like, this feels like it has something in there.
It almost, the first thing that actually came to my mind was Critters. with
right?
this movie.
Yeah. There was definitely a lot of something comes to Earth and wants to, I mean, Killer Clowns from Outer Space is essentially the same thing. If you've never seen Invaders of Mars, though, or From Mars.
I don't know if I've ever seen that one. Killer Clowns,
It's one of my lists, right? I heard someone on Twitter refer to this as Kinder Tear, right? And they call it the Kinder Tear genre of what's a movie you saw way too young that traumatized you forever, right? Like The Witches is a great example where like, oh, it's a Roald Dahl like children's movie. You're like, that movie's fucking horrendously terrifying. But Invaders from Mars is essentially E.T. with like, oh fuck, someone's gonna get cannibalized. Like it's really very scary for kids.
I don't even know anything about that one. I don't even remember.
Check it out though, right? Add it to your Slither list.
Yeah, that's you're gonna make me have to do a podcast on it.
I know. Oh hell yeah, dude! I would love to do that one for sure. We'll do that in Critters. That'll be
perfect.
But this is what I'm saying, right? So there were movies like this that could just have a great monster, these great kind of high concept things. Amazing practical effects, a lot of fun, right? Like the characters are kind of joking their way through it, you know, like they're the kind of characters that almost on a subconscious level know they're in a movie, right?
Yeah.
And so there's just a lot of kind of fun tongue-in-cheek stuff. But that's what I think is so cool about this is it feels like a love letter to all those movies we loved, right? Like the drive-in 80s stuff, or you know, like one of the best things when we were younger, because we're a little older, is going to the video store and just like perusing the horror aisle.
Yeah.
And just being like, what is that cover? Like, I'll watch that shit. Yep. Whatever it is. And this feels like it's kind of insanely well produced, insanely well written version of that with this great cast.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's what makes this movie so special. And again, I'm not sure why this one didn't become more popular, right? And there are kind of a handful of these. I don't know if you've ever seen Splinter. But it's another one of these something comes from somewhere and is taking people over. Maybe people are just, I've seen that story too many times, right? And I don't know what it is, but I feel like Slither.
Well, your description also kind of brings to mind like Cabin in the Woods. Like,
right.
Another great movie that never really took off, but it's actually one of my personal like favorites.
Right. That one's kind of a very meta examination of horror too, right? And that's what I mean. There's so many great movies in this category that maybe that's the problem.
Yeah, just that
it
category
just got lost, right? You're like, I've seen that movie 50 times. I think this one is different, though. If I had to pinpoint what I think is really much better about Slither, is I think it's just Michael Rooker, right? like I know a lot of people would say Nathan Fillion is this great addition to the movie. And that's true. Like, he's a great actor. But I feel like you could find other guys that could do something like that role, right?
Mm-hmm.
Michael Rooker in this movie really gets a character. You know, so he takes what would just be this generic, oh, he's like a bad guy, bad husband, and then becomes a meaty. But that's what I mean. Michael Rooker, right? He has this. I've always loved him, right? I've always adored him because I remember the first movie I ever saw him in was Mallrats.
Yeah, that's the first thing, and he hasn't aged a day. So I think he's always been like 50 years old.
From the time he was 21, he looked 50, and he's just keeping that. But that's what I mean. He just was like, oh, like look at that. He's like a bad guy, right?
But he's not a bad guy, really.
You start finding him in the movie where I was like, oh, fuck, this guy's like next level. Because he's in a lot of movies as, you know, like a character actor. But when I saw Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, you're like, oh, shit. Like this guy. And what Michael Rooker does that I think is such an amazing lane to have for an actor is he plays an everyman who cannot be one of us, right? So he plays a guy that you're like, I'm sure I have seen and kind of been around people like that. But he always has this like wolf in sheep's clothing thing about him, right?
Just the way he talks, his mannerism.
There's subtext about him. Even in this movie, when I think you could argue in this movie that Grant is actually pretty heroic and a decent guy, right?
I don't know about heroic, but he loves his wife. Like he.
But no. Here's a great example. This is what I'm saying, right? When he becomes the monster, right? You're like, oh, this is classic. He's just going to be a monster, right? Mm-hmm. The scene that struck out to me, I was like, this is why you get Michael Rooker for this, is when she's in the shower. They're getting ready for the fucking line dancing festival or whatever.
the deer cheer?
Deer cheer, yeah. And so she's in the shower, right? And he comes in and his fucking tentacles are out. It's very phallic, right? He's like, oh, all right, I'm coming to get her. And he watches his wife, right? And these tears like start forming in his eyes. And you see him, right? This is Grant's last act of humanity, where he still has enough left of himself to fight and not give into this parasite that's hijacked his body, to save the woman he loves.
Well, throughout the whole movie, that's like his main saving grace is he does not want to hurt his wife. He doesn't give two shits about anybody else.
Right, fuck everyone else.
But he loves his wife. Like even before he becomes the monster, like
Yeah.
when that woman like tries to seduce him, he's like, "No, I love my wife." Like this
Right.
has been fun hanging out in the woods and talking. You
Yeah.
know, probably crossed a few lines, but he didn't have
I was
an
gonna
affair.
say we're both married.
Yeah, we
and
wouldn't
if
be
you
in
came
deep
home
shit
and
for
you're
that.
like, honey, I know you weren't in the mood last night, but you definitely will be now. I left you to go to a bar, get drunk, hit on this girl, went out in the woods. We kissed for 10 seconds.
No. She
And
kissed
then
me. I didn't kiss her.
Yeah.
I pushed her away, but I did. I might have given her a piggyback ride through the woods.
Yeah, in the grand history of mankind, the she kissed me has never worked. That's not an excuse that ever works.
I'm not saying it would. He would not. No. Yeah, it'd be in deep shit. But nonetheless, though, when pushed to the edge, even as the monster, when pushed to the edge, he loves his wife and he always pulled back.
Right.
He never wanted to hurt her.
When he becomes more of like the fully fledged Clayface Cthulhu looking thing, right?
Yeah,
then he has this thing where he still wants her, but in his own way, right? That's the last moment where he just lets her exist on her own, right? And he's like, I want to preserve you the way you are. The next time we see them together in the field after he's catching the cow and he runs away and they surround him with the guns, he still has that damn, it would be awesome to absorb you. You know what I mean? Then he's more of the traditional bad husband where I want to make you a part of me.
Is that him or is that the parasite? That's there's a...
Well, this gets... that is another theme in the movie constantly, which is really fun. But I think that's the thing though, right? Even at the end when they're doing the Jabba orgy, right? Where it almost looks like Society. And I don't know if I'm giving you a lot of movie homework, but if you've never seen Society...
Nope, I haven't seen that one either.
It has... arguably the greatest ending of any movie ever. For the last, it feels 30 minutes, but it might only be
an Eyes Wide Shut thing that happens at the end.
Let's say if in Eyes Wide Shut, someone's face had melted with their asshole and was talking to you. It's really weird.
All right.
Clive Barker probably watched that and was like, oh, the vapors, this is insane. But it reminds me of that because again, it's this melding of the flesh, right? Mm. And so it's such a weird movie, but you have to watch it. It's an undeniably insane film. But what this movie is doing with him, right? So even when he's in the Jabba orgy room, what I love, and this is what is so
I don't know
good,
if there's call it an orgy. It's
I mean, there are a lot of people, flesh type. I mean,
I was thinking more like
Cronenberg.
Cronenberg is probably more where I would.
But I'm saying Cronenberg and Clive Barker especially, right? They do a lot of these kind of visceral, you feel like you're sticky from watching them kind of body horror things. They're all sexual symbolisms, right?
So this movie, the whole tentacles, with the alien spunk getting injected into people, and then I guess all the people in there, they do start rolling their eyes back, getting off from
when he fucking stabs Nathan Fillion, and they're like, oh,
yeah.
It's just
yeah, you're right. Okay, fine.
And this is the other thing that lets you know it's a sexual thing, is that when she enters the room, right? Because they kidnap her back, right? His wife. Starla, right? Mm-hmm. Which immediately made me think of Napoleon Dynamite. Think anyone laughs at me because I go home to Starla every... There's a universe where that was Grant and Starla before. But that's neither here nor there. So they go into the room, right? And she's all dressed in white. He's had his minions decorate the whole room with her pictures. Yeah. He plays the "you're every woman in the world to me," which becomes really creepy in the context of what he's doing, absorbing all the women in the world, right? But when she walks in, right, all the minions are going, "You fucking whore, you slut."
Right? Yeah,
they're screaming, and Grant sits there, still taking her in.
But no, they're talking through him. They're saying what he wants them to say.
I don't think
because it's a hive mind.
Because they all have things that they can say on their own, or he can speak through them. We'll get to the next thing we'll do is break down what the creature actually is, because I think that's the coolest part of the movie too. But that scene, right? There are just moments of Michael Rooker in this immense amount of practical makeup, right? And he just with his eyes can still fucking get you there. Mm-hmm. That there's this broken, devastated, and she even says you like when I call you Grant,
right? Yeah,
and they just
when
cut
she still humanizes him.
Yeah, and you're just looking at this look at this fucking monster. What is happening? But all I could look at with all this shit going on the screen is Michael Rooker's eyes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's what separates this movie out from those movies we watched in the 80s.
That a guy can still act, even though the only part of him that you can actually see is his eyes.
I mean,
everything else is just hardcore
I've
makeup.
always heard that, right? When I lived in Hollywood and shit, people were always actors would say, it's in the eyes, man. You got it or you don't, right? Mm-hmm. If you look in someone's eyes when they're acting, you can tell if they've gone there and they're feeling it or if they're faking it. right? And Michael Rooker's just one of the most underappreciated actors of all time. And he fucking, I mean, that's the thing in this movie, right? Is he takes the monster and gives it this amazing breadth of heart and emotion. And that's just something we didn't see in those like schlockier versions of these movies from when we were kids.
Yep. Yeah, and especially for someone that is like pigeonholed in almost every single role. He's always that hardcore redneck gun-toting, kind of a sleazy backstabbing guy, like in everything he does.
Yeah. But that's what I mean. Even in Henry, right? He has this like code of honor. And so you're like, oh, look at Henry, like stopping this guy from raping his sister. Granted, he just killed 25 women, you know, in the opening credits, but you're like, what a nice guy. And that's like the power that he has, right?
Yep.
And so I think that's amazing. Also amazing in this movie is the monster, obviously. Like, the monster work is fucking outstanding in this movie.
Yeah, like, what was, like, the budget on this? Because, like, I can't imagine it was actually really high.
No.
But
if this movie was like $30 million, I would imagine that was probably the high end of what it could be.
Right, but what they did with like minimal resources was amazing.
Right.
In this movie, like the CG can be a little terrible at times, but like the actual like prosthetics.
I mean, it's also 2006.
Right, exactly.
Right?
So you know you have your standards like
$15 million.
Wow,
$15 million, which is not a big budget for what they found. And what I think this movie does, right, and this is, I'll give it a lot of credit. The practical effects are fucking awesome.
Yep.
And the CG is not always great, right? I'll give you that.
But it is 2006. You're right.
It's early use of CG. But what this movie does is how I've always wanted people to use CG, right? My theory is if you're in a wide shot, right? If my point of view of whatever I'm watching is far away, animate away. I don't care, right? Because then it's, you know, the human eye I don't see as well at a distance. It's dark. Like there's a monster there's a monster I've never seen. So as a character, I'm creating like whatever it is in my mind. You can see how it would look weird to you, right? Fine, do all that. When you bring me in for the moment, I want that shit to be real.
Right.
If they had this is a great analog with like the Scorpion King. You remember when that shit came out?
Yeah, God, yeah.
And it has probably the worst CG of any movie I remember. Where like they animate the Rock's face, and you're like, oh. If you had animated Michael Rooker's face when he's like in the worm outfit, this movie doesn't work to me at all. It falls apart.
Right.
But the fact that they know when to take their shots, right? Like, we can CG when we're further away to get, like, a gore effect or something that's hard to do. But when we come in, right? Like, probably the most iconic scene in the movie is the breeder barn, right? Where they track him through the woods and they open the barn. And there is, what's her name? Bridget?
I don't remember her name. Just
Bertha?
the big
Bertha's
slug
probably
ball.
not right. Yeah. Whatever her name is, right? She's like this... fucking Veronica or whatever her name is from Willy Wonka, right? She's the blueberry girl gone awry. Violet, that's her name. Violet Beauregard.
Violet, your turn in Violet. Yeah.
And so they open the barn and she's just, I don't feel so good. I'm so hungry.
Right.
And it's just this massive, right? She looks like a gigantic sphere.
Yeah. And
a little tiny face. And you're just thinking about the practical effect is you do any kind of like inflation setup and you just stick her fucking face in there. But it looks so much better because we can see that face. And then when you pull away and her body's ripping, you're like, whatever. You already won me over with the awesome effect. Finish it however you need to budget-wise.
And I love that thing because that's also one of those things where it's both like kind of like horrifying and fun at the exact same time. Like that's really cool. Totally impractical because obviously if anybody was like actually inflated, they're not talking. I mean,
don't
like,
bring your doctor mind into you don't know alien
but no, that's where I was talking about like where this movie kind of makes fun of itself, where it puts like these ridiculous situations that are just kind of fun and really cool to see. They're a little bit terrifying, but you're
that's
still
a lot of bit fucking terrifying.
But you still, I watched. I'm like that's a really cool scene. Like it's just very imaginative.
So
like
it's
surreal. Like that's what I love. And anything in horror, if it's surreal, I love it.
Turns her into an egg sack.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. The unwed mother being turned into an ASAC, I'm like, it's a little on the nose, right? Punishing her for like a life choice a lot of us have made. That's weird.
I don't know if that was the underlying message.
The movie felt like it was saying, oh, she's trying to nab someone else's husband on purpose.
I don't know if she was like trying to find like a baby daddy as much as she was just.
You don't think so?
Or she could have been a gold digger. She could have been.
That's the same shit, dude.
Right?
She could
have done that with or without the baby.
This is what when the sheriffs were talking to her, like that's a pair I'll never understand. Grant and Starla.
Right.
And they say specifically she grew up broke, right? And he showed up in a Cadillac and she wanted to be a lady. What this girl is he meets in the bar seemingly is what they told us Starla was.
What they thought, so what everybody thinks Starla is.
What they thought Starla was. And it feels like she's trying to like, hey man, I'm gonna move up the ladder. Like, I heard things are weak over there. Why is your husband in a bar? I'm coming for his ass.
Oh, I would
totally say fair play.
I'm not gonna forgive a homewrecker by any means. I don't know if
Hey, as a
the
married
story
guy,
was punitive.
if my wife is out at the bar looking for someone else, I think that probably I've not been great to her, right? Like, I'm not saying it's my fault. If she breaks the covenant, right, of a marriage, that's on her for sure. But I think these things always start because, things are not great.
Right.
And so I think she's taking a fair shot, right? Like, hey man, I also want to live in the nice house.
But there are things not great at home. It's like, oh, she was not in the mood for a little while. Like that's
right.
not
yeah,
that's not things not being good at home. That's normal.
She's like, hey, can you not like maul me?
Yeah,
can
right.
Exactly. I have my curlers in. Can I fucking sleep? Everyone who's married and has kids knows that life for sure. But that's what I mean, right? So it's not like a big deal. But then not only does he be like, well, you're a trashier version of my wife, so I'll impregnate you and turn you into an egg sack. Later on, little known thing that I totally forgot in the movie, when the girl has the Pacific Rim moment where she sees the like other world this thing is eaten, we start seeing flashes of the things it's done, right? Mm-hmm. There's an overhead shot peering into the crib with the baby after we see the flashback of him impregnating that lady.
So
Grant definitely fucking ate that baby.
No, they said the baby was with somebody else. Like the cops. Like,
of course they said that to lie.
Yeah,
You're
true.
telling me in that flashback of the creature, he impregnates his mom and goes and looks at, oh, look, another little baby that I won't absorb and eat.
I mean, that is, in this particular movie, that is believable because that's one thing that actually caught me on. This movie was like totally unforgiving.
Yeah.
Like with its
Brutal.
deaths. Like it didn't matter if you were a kid or an innocent civilian
a cop,
or what.
It doesn't matter.
No. Like,
my favorite death, though, by far, is the politician. Right? Because he gets
he's
captured.
like, shoot me, and poof, like no hesitation.
Well, because it's it's the fly moment, right? The Cronenberg like, kill me.
Yeah.
And Gina Davis is like crying, like, I love this
right.
man. Like, there might still be a human. And he's like, kill me. And then she begrudgingly does it. He asks Nathan Fillion, who just looks and he's like, okay. Dope. Fucking wasted.
But that was like even with Starlet, like with Starlet with the other cop.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, you don't have the balls to shoot me. Boom.
Yeah.
Dead. Like, no hesitation. There was like no like thought like, hey, maybe we can save these guys. Yeah. Like maybe if we like kill like the head alien, everyone else might go back to normal. No. They just go guns blazing.
Yeah.
Just kill everybody.
I like that because that's how it should be in an apocalypse. Like the moment you see a guy who's a giant like worm tentacle beast, you'd be like, yeah, I'm not taking any risk.
You're just gonna kill everybody.
Yeah, fuck all of you. Like,
even if there's a chance, like if you just went for the head alien that they might go back to normal, you would have no qualms of taking everybody out.
This movie doesn't ask the question in as difficult a way as like The Color Out of Space. Like that asks that question in a much more hard-hitting, close-to-home manner.
Right. Well, especially when
this one is just like, there was a husband who was pretty fucking close to cheating on you, and a bunch of other people that talk shit behind your back. Like, would you shoot them? Yeah, fuck yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they didn't give two shits about anybody in their community. Like
Nathan Fillion's just like, my deputy, who I'm probably great friends with, runs him down and says Starla. But yeah, that's what I mean.
Or the other cop that just like walks up behind him, he's like, shoots him like straight.
Once
to the head.
you see shit like that. I think it's crazy in movies where people, it's kind of this thing where people, you see a lot of horror movies where, especially like apocalypse movies, right? Where people have lived in a world now for a long time, presumably. And they still have this delusion that any of the old rules apply, right? Like you're a political junkie, kind of like I am, right? Probably even more than me. I'm not that into it. But I like the blood sport nature of sports, right?
Yeah.
And there's this thing where like everyone's like on Twitter, like, Democratic candidates need to do this and this and this. You're like, that's not the world we live in anymore, man. Like, we're in a new world where, like, all that old shit, like, playing nice and whatever is gone, man. Like, the orange slug from space, like, changed all the rules and we're here to kill. You know, like, this is political blood sport now. And you see that in horror movies all the time where, like, Walking Dead will have a character who's just like, I don't want to do it. I want to be friends with people. You're like, yeah, great. You're going to not last an episode. Like, you could not have lived long enough to be in the movie as I'm seeing you now, because the world. I think you would be surprised how fast people would change.
In a real world post-apocalyptic, how little fucks people would give for the well-being of others.
Right on the outskirts of Indianapolis, a fairly big city, but in a fairly sparse rural state of Indiana, right?
Yeah.
If this happened in my neighborhood, I'm telling you for a fact, within 24 hours, anyone who's alive would have killed one of their neighbors. it would have happened, right? I would do it.
Without taking a half a second to even think about the necessity of doing so.
If my neighbors, who I love dearly, came over to my house and and like their arm is a tentacle, I would grab my wedding katana and be like, "You're fucking dead. I'm killing you." Especially if my kids are fucking here.
Okay,
like,
fair
are you
enough.
kidding me? Like, you're fucking done. And then when I see her erupt into a ball of like fucking leeches that are trying to get in people's mouths and shit, I'd be like, no fucking way.
Well, nothing you would have been able to do to stop that.
You think I'm gonna drag them outside?
You would have shot her, and then they would have just been leeches everywhere still.
Right. Well, they made the classic like 1917 mistake, like, oh, I'm gonna give you water and comfort. Oh, I got attacked, and it's like, yeah, dude, that's right. This is a movie, right? They even tell us early. This is a movie of survival of the fittest.
Yeah, they
right?
do say, yeah.
And it's not the strongest; it's whoever's the most fucking ready, right?
Or the most
mental preparedness is part of survival. Like
Yeah.
this is why I always say, like, you never hear like, or you never see like the documentary on a great boxing champion, and they're like, well, he grew up in a wealthy white person neighborhood. He had like a gated yard. Like, yeah, like those people don't have to fight for shit. Like real boxer, like Mike Tyson always said that. He's like, my kid came to me and said, hey, I think I want to be a boxer like you. And he's like, no fucking way. You know, he's like, he like laughed in his son's face, and he's like, you've been rich your whole life. He's like, do you know what it's like to be in a ring with a person like I was?
Mm-hmm.
Like a fucking full-on maniac, like fighting to kill you because they have nothing.
So how does Muhammad Ali's daughter do it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, there are people that are probably greatly talented.
I don't know if she actually. I don't know how good of a boxer she actually
good.
is.
She was good. And I don't know a lot of stats, but like I know she was winning fights. I think she was a champion. But that's what I mean. There are exceptions to every rule.
Right.
But that's what I mean. You can go through the list, and there are not an enormous, number of. Well, I got like a college degree and I had a 4.0 and everything was nice. My parents weren't abusive. Mom and dad were both there the whole time. Loved me. Like that's not the story.
You're not going to live in an apocalypse.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. In the post-apocalypse, right? Like fittest is not the best muscles or whatever.
Right, it's mental.
Yeah, are you ready to fucking get the job done? Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the first, and this movie does a good job of that, is are you the first person who's like, if I shoot now, like I got an extra day, an extra hour, an extra minute. Those are the people that survive apocalyptic situations.
Fighting for that, doing whatever it takes to get that extra minute.
Hell yeah,
every single time.
And this movie does that, right? Like he sees his friend who he's worked across from, probably went to school with, and he's like, I better run him over with a car. And that's why he makes it to the end of the movie. Probably not a lot after that. But yeah, I think that's really cool in this movie. I hate movies where people are still trying to be like super noble.
Right.
Because I'm like, there might be a version of that. Yeah, like I'll take like like Hodor in Game of Thrones, right? That's like a reasonably noble apocalyptic move.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'll throw myself down so you guys can live, but maybe we can still make friends with it. That person does not make it in these movies.
Right. As far as a plot device, it would be rather derivative if they had done that, especially repeatedly over and over and over and over and over again. So yeah, it is a great plot piece in this that it does set this movie apart, because there's not very many movies where, like, even like in Walking Dead, where people like are just like non-hesitant, take everybody out, whatever I need to do.
Well, that was
to survive.
A huge Walking Dead storyline is when Carol's like, yeah, they were gonna turn, so I murdered them. They're like, ew, gross, Carol, get out of here. It's like, what the fuck?
And then she like is a stronger survivor because of that.
Yeah, and then the show comes back and they're like, just kidding, guys, she was right the whole time. But yeah, that's what I mean, man. I think that's cool in this movie. And that's the other thing, the movie's set in a hunting town.
Right.
So these people are like, we understand the, surviving the game aspect of this. Like, we'll fucking get it.
Well, yeah, it kind of like, it sets up like a whole thing of like human beings being the top of the food chain.
Yeah.
And like how precarious that can actually be in the grand scheme of the universe.
Right.
But yeah, they just like start off with like just completely 100% like pro gun toting town. Like every store sign is selling it. Yeah, they're hunting town. Like they have like a yearly, like the biggest celebration of the town is to kill deer, which I grew up deer hunting. I'm not having anything against that, but it is just kind of an interesting.
You almost murdered me in our college house with a deer hunting bow and arrow. I know.
You got to put some context on that. I didn't shoot it at you directly. I was practicing, and you walked in.
Okay, let's put context on this. We were in a home, inside of a home. You put yourself in a room where you couldn't see anything outside of the room.
I'm not saying it was smart.
Shot across the room, and when I rounded the corner, a fucking arrow went past me. I could have been killed Slither style.
I admit I was completely stupid and lucky that I didn't.
So let's hold back on your
I was not
condemnation of gun-toting crazy people, because you're just an arrow-toting crazy person. You're the exact same.
No, I can at least say I know what it was like to be a stupid arrow-toting person. To realize I'll admit I was wrong.
Arrows don't kill people. People kill people.
No. I 100% was wrong for shooting a compound bow and arrow inside the house along a range that I could not see. I was a dumbass 20-year-old.
Well, I'm glad it only took us like 16 years to get there.
No, I would have admitted that a long time ago. We just didn't really. It's just been a funny bar
I
story.
believe what you actually said is like, well, why were you coming upstairs? That was like your initial take. But I think that's So one of the other things about this movie I think is great, right? Because I love the setup of the monster too, right? So this is man versus beast, right? In the most classic sense. But what it does too at the start of the movie is it takes a lot of effort to try to paint this town as a very depressing place without being mean to the people of the city.
It does paint them as kind of stupid.
I don't even think it paints them
maybe
as
it's
stupid.
Simple.
Right?
Maybe simple. Maybe a better word.
And that's the thing. I don't think that's wrong. Like there are just people that live in places like this where, I mean, if we're being honest, where we live is kind of like this. There's not a lot of things happening, right? Like, you know what I mean? And so what it is, it's just people just going about normal lives, right? And the scene that really struck me, I liked was, so we start off and there's this weird downtown. It looks like kind of a very Midwestern downtown. But then it has like graffiti and a lot of like homeless looking people, which is very different for a small town like this to have that. And then we cut to the karaoke bar, right? And it's just the most depressing bar you've ever seen. And I've been in that bar a lot. Like
there's
I used
like
to know
three
those
people,
bars,
and the only
right?
person singing karaoke is singing like a completely obscure, depressing song. Yeah, I've been in that bar too. I went up and sang Eve 6, Inside Out. Everybody looked at me like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?"
So the
that
depressed
is
people
not what we do
of
here.
the town in Slither were like, "Wow, you made it worse somehow." Great. And I'm an Eve 6 guy, so that's fine. We were of that era. But this is what's cool, right? Is that scene comes directly after the survival of the fittest, right? Man's at the top of the food chain. And there's this great moment of what it does. It kind of cracks the armor of that myth, right? Where we're sitting there, and she says the line about cockroaches. Are we really that much better than them, right? But it doesn't drive home for me until I see that karaoke scene. Because you're sitting there, and as an audience member, I was like, fuck, man, we have all of these advantages, all these powers and prowess and brain power and our problem solving. We can make weapon. We've harnessed fire and technology. We've been to the stars. And this is all we have to show for it.
This is what we do with it.
you're like, maybe we're not as powerful as we think we are. Right? And like, I guess as I've gotten older, you see that everywhere in life where you're just like, grown-up world doesn't make sense to me at all. Like, we should be better. Why is it so hard to make things better, right?
I mean, how human beings are just kind of a walking example of wasted potential.
Yeah,
like the epitome,
just
I would say, of that
craziness.
in all of nature.
Yeah. Like, we have Joaquin Phoenix at the Oscars like, oh, you guys shouldn't put milk in your coffee. And I was like, hey, man, in the same town you live in, there are human beings that live on the road.
Yeah.
Like, maybe let's show some context to our
let's
what
prioritize things and take one at a
say,
time.
Like, hey man, I'm not here to like take calves from moms. Like, don't come after me, animal people. I love animals. But I was just making a point. Like, we have like weird things that we allow in our society, right?
Yeah.
Like, I used to do that. I used to give a lot of money to local like Los Angeles dog charities. But then I was like, man, that's fucked up. Because one day I was coming home from a farmer's market with my wife, and some guy was just like, desperately wanting some food. And he had no fucking shoes, and he showed me his feet. You're a doctor. His feet look like, oh God, they look like the Thing from Fantastic Four. Like, I don't know what. They were like burning on the road, and he had no shoes, and they were fucking disgusting and hideous. And he's like a little guy, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, that's fucked up, man. I gave him my fucking shoes, and he could barely get them on, even though I'm a lot bigger than him because his fucking feet were so
too gnarled.
swollen. And that was the day I was like, you know what? I'm never giving money to dog charities again. Yeah. Like, that guy needs our help. And this is what the movie does really well, is it just sets up this like, hey man, this is a more even battle than you think. And not because this monster is a super monster, but because we're not all we fucking think we are. Yeah. And then when they start turning on each other quick, you're like, I see the folly of man.
we do have a lot of vulnerabilities.
Yeah. In this movie, I never thought about it, but I was like, this is the perfect 2020 election year movie. Right, so you have like your MAGA people are the gun-toting civilians, and then like the Bernie Bros are the monster. They're all just forging together into this one lump of like socialist mass.
So
No,
I'm trying to get where the slugs infecting the.
Yeah, right. I have to make another disclaimer. I also like Bernie. Bernie bros, don't fucking attack us. You don't do.
You don't know what you're doing messing with the Bernie bros, man.
As a guy who talks all the time, I do hours a week of
rally.
podcast. You always have to remember to clarify. Don't fucking murder me. I'm just making funnies.
I will back him up. He does off camera support Bernie quite a bit. We have a lot of discussions about that.
I just think it's funny. It reminds me there's this comic book called The World of Tomorrow, I think, right? It's like a Justice League Darwin Cook thing. And they're fighting this giant monster Starro, right? He's like this giant fucking absorbing creature or whatever. And I saw him at a comic book convention. He's like, yeah, he's like, the weirdest thing to me is I wrote that book. And I was like, the symbolism's like too on the nose, right? Mm-hmm. It's superheroes fighting communism.
Yeah.
And I remember even in the audience like, oh, that's what that fucking was?
And he thought it was.
And he looked out at us and he's like, you guys didn't know either. Like, how did you not know that was communism? And maybe that's what this creature is, but it's a little more dictatorial.
Well, and considering it was like 2006, like you gotta put it in context.
Yeah, we weren't fully as crazy about politics as we are now.
Well, I mean that was the Bush era. Like,
we just didn't have Twitter as much. We didn't have as much social media.
So, Facebook was like very like much of an infancy
but this
at that point in time.
Right? The monster even at one point says, "I've been around for 1 billion."
Yeah, that's what he does say. That I've been around for 1 billion years.
You think you can fuck with me?
Yeah.
And there is
apparently he never encountered combustible gas in all of his journey throughout the universe, but
you know what I think it is? I actually don't think it's that. I'll tell you what I think it is what I think the movie's telling us, right? Because what we can see is that this creature can impregnate and make egg sacs to make tons of little worms that go out and can make an army of minions that do whatever he wants, have their own knowledge and personality, but he can talk through them, right?
Right.
He can also absorb as many people as he wants and become bigger and stronger. And they have kind of that green spit, like kind of.
Yeah, they never really explained much.
Yeah,
of, like, what
it
happens.
Didn't feel like it was acidic, but it felt like it was bad if it hit you.
Like because her face swells up and she says it burns, but there's nothing else beyond that. And you see him occasionally like spitting on like a corpse on the ground that's screaming in pain.
I took it as it was like digestive acid, right? Like the fly when he pukes on the guy's hand, it's like
I saw it as like another way to like spread like the hive mind, to infect them. Like, but it's never clear.
Could be.
It's never clear.
But what you find in this movie, to me, right, is what they're telling us is this creature is so strong because it takes your strength and then adds its strengths on top of it, right? What they fail to anticipate is mankind's great, great weaknesses, right? The fact that he's bonded to Grant specifically creates the kryptonite that destroys him.
Okay.
This is a great scene, too. When they're in the Jabba orgy room, he's still fucking jealous of Bill Prady, the sheriff.
Yeah.
He's still fucking jealous. He is an alien overlord who's consuming this whole city. And within, at the rate they took this city, or like within, let's say, even conservatively, 2 years, he's going to take over the entire planet. Right? He's got to cross oceans, but that won't be that bad, it feels like. So you're like this alien overlord, the eater of worlds. And you're still fucking jealous of a small town yokel sheriff. That's
because it doesn't.
That's what destroys him, right?
It doesn't 100% take over the host. Like the host still has
King
some
Kong,
control.
right? 'Twas beauty slayed the beast, right? And I think that's the problem: is that we have. This gets back to how he sets up the town so well. Is that with all of this great ability and power, we are these creatures that have a lot of really weird hypocrisies. You know what I mean? And so for him to take us over, and he still has Grant's mind, right? And I think that's the problem, is he never fully anticipates the depth of our own self-destructive natures.
And yeah, it's an interesting point of like anything that actually tries to accumulate the masses for any purpose will inherently self-destruct by the flaws of the individual people in and of itself. That's actually interesting.
Because the individual person, right? And this is where I think the movie's trying to say too is we see the X-ray shot when Grant gets hit at
Yeah,
the start.
that was one of the weird scenes. Like when we did that scene, I'm like, I don't know how good this movie's gonna be, just because
it's amazing. I think what he's saying is that it's a brain parasite, right?
Yeah.
I think it's just one of those, like, this is just an easy way to explain this away.
I mean, I would have been just fine if he just like got in there and he started shaking a little bit, and then he comes up and I'm like, okay, I still get it.
He could have done.
I don't need to do the X-ray. Like has bleed out the ears, out the nose.
Bother me.
That's the one thing that scene bothered me in that movie, because it just looked terrible.
You doctors.
No, it had nothing to do medically. It just
the X-ray quality was fine.
No, it was just shitty CG. That was unnecessary. That was the one scene I would say that could be taken out of that movie to make it better.
I think it's fine, man. Like if you're using that as a way to tell me, if that's like your one strike, like that's fine.
Yeah, I know. It's still an overall good movie.
It's
yeah,
fine. But what 99%. I think it's saying, though, right, is he takes over your brain, and he's like, the brain is what separates us from everything else we've competed against, right? Mm-hmm. Our brain power is what makes us the most powerful, right? Because I remember reading that Sapiens book, and he was like, language is why we became who we are. Because we can more rapidly be like, instead of like, like lion there, and just pointing, we could be like, lion, third tree, second bend of the river. Watch the fuck out. You know? I mean,
let's make this complex device to kill the lion.
And that's what I mean. So we could communicate and spread information faster, and that's what made us stronger. So the parasite takes over our fucking brain, supposedly our strongest asset. And what he doesn't realize is that every human being, the smartest, most well-accomplished, whatever, we can always be undone by
our emotions.
Hearts. Yeah. By the heart, right? You know, affairs of the heart. It will always fucking completely undercut anything else we're doing in life. That no matter what happens, we are all just creatures of emotion.
Yep.
And that's what the parasite never figured out. And this is why the Grant thing becomes extra good, right? It's because early Grant, you see him, I'll stop. I want her to exist as she is.
Yeah.
Right? At the end, Grant wants Starla only as a way to glorify himself, right? He wants her to be a part of him to make him feel better rather than existing as herself, right? He no longer emotionally cares about her.
But he still doesn't want to absorb her, does he? Because he starts letting go. He lets go of her.
I think the plan is, because they were calling her mother, and so I think the plan is that she will be turned also. She's not going to stay the lady in the white dress.
Because he got mad because he's like, you betrayed me. Like, and then he kind of forgives her for it. Like, he lets go of that anger, and he starts letting her go and letting her go off. I think the whole time, like, all the hive mind, they're all gentle with her. They pick her up. They let her down very gently. So, no, I think, like, that was, like, I don't think it was self-serving, his love. I think it was just, like, his one human attachment. He doesn't love,
but that's what I mean. The Eater of Worlds that we see is incapable of loving another creature because
Grant's love overpowers that.
But he's the fucking small exhaust vent in the Death Star. You know what I mean? Grant's heart and his emotions. But that's the part that I thought was so funny. That's the extra level that Michael Rooker brings to it, right? Is there's that little fucking thing. Because he even says earlier, right, when he takes over the sheriff, and he's saying Grant's lines to her, right? This like false voice through the deputy, like a marriage is a bond. I am sorry. I wanted to do better.
Yeah.
That Grant kind of hijacked this guy's mind because the other zombies just wake up and go on the attack. This deputy didn't. Then she blows his fucking head off and all hell breaks loose.
It is weird that he challenged her to shoot him too.
Right. But you hear as he's like, as he's starting to twist and turn, it feels as if the Eater of Worlds is taking the mind over. And he says, he's like, you can't hate a creature for acting according to its nature. That thing's nature is, wherever species you are, you're not worthy of living, and you are only food for me.
Yeah.
And I will absorb you into me to glorify myself, take everything, and then go do it again. For billions of years, I mean, this could be like thousands and thousands of planets, right? And so I think that's the really cool part is, our weakness then by proxy becomes a strength at the end, right? That's how we can get in there and defeat this fucking thing that has eaten every other world we've seen. And I think that's pretty fucking cool, man.
Well, it's always based on what it does. It is always subjective to its host's own weakness. So our inherent weakness is our strength from parasites.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I mean, it's War of the Worlds, right? Like they're fucking us up and then they're like, oh, we got a cough. They catch a cold and so like this thing that's eradicated us forever,
they
but
didn't
made
have
us
any
a little
immunity
stronger.
to it,
They get fucked up.
We went through that process of having
The sequel to that book
Hundreds
is
of
hilarious
thousands
because they bring back the cold virus, become immune to it, and come back and fuck us up like 10 years later. Right?
I didn't even know there was a sequel to War of the Worlds.
There's not. I'm saying that's why they didn't write it, because it's not good. They're just like, haha, we got you now.
Well, I mean, they
fuckers.
would technically have to go through the same process. They would have to cultivate what all those viruses, bring it back, let hundreds of thousands of their own species die, and just let the ones that survive keep spreading that genetic.
Here we go. The doctor's over here. Let me have my science fiction medicine.
I'm saying it's a good plot device. I like that plot device in War of the Worlds. It works.
But I think it's cool that the weakness of our heart becomes the strength of mankind. And you see it too because it's really played in Grant, because in Grant it's shown as the weakness that helps us defeat the monster, but it's still a strength for Grant, a weakness for the monster. But then for Prady too, it's his strength is that he's so willing to hold this torch for Starla.
Yeah, and he's self-sacrifices.
He's still fucking going for it at the end, right? Like, I still am gonna get it. He even has like Chekhov's grenade, right, that blows up in the pool.
The whole like grenade scene did bother me. I'm like, God damn, that thing has the longest fuse out of any fucking grenade.
Yeah, when he's like searching through the feather.
Their first instinct is go and get it. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? 'Cause I really thought they were gonna blow him up, like trying to find the grenade.
I think you might have still achieved the mission if you just hadn't picked it up.
Yeah, if you just like left it,
let it
there still would have been plenty.
I mean,
that was a closed room.
Yeah.
That shrapnel goes
You
pretty
might
far.
not have gotten them all. You would have taken a dent. You would have made it.
I did love though that he did swat it away, because I thought it was gonna be like a real simple way to kill you just go and throw a grenade, done and over. I love that he swatted it away.
Yeah.
And they had to like do something else.
I think because of the rapey vibe of the Eater of Worlds, him being destroyed through putting his dick in something without checking it out first.
It was much more fitting.
Yeah, that's a perfect way for him to die. I'm totally okay with that. But I don't know, man. I think that's I wish this movie would ascend past cult following, because I feel like it's just, I honestly, as like in this era of horror movies, it was a lot of Japanese curse remakes, which I love those movies, right? Like The Ring, and I know people hate on The Grudge. I liked The Grudge when it came out. Shit like that I really dug. And if you even just went and watched the Asian versions, they were fantastic.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of torture porn, right?
Yeah, those were the Hostel days.
Yeah, that was like Hostel, and that's when horror movies to me they just took the fun out.
Yep.
And it became how much can you just stomach to watch? Like, I never thought Hostel was scary. It just dared me to not walk out of the theater as I saw people's bodies being ripped apart, and I didn't give a fuck about it.
Right.
Right? And then
it was like eating something gross, or eating like a gigantic burger. Can you eat 2 pounds of hamburger or 4 pounds of hamburger? Like, you really don't want to do that, but something about them saying, "Can you?"
Can
makes
you eat the world's hottest pepper?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
I could. Why would I do that? Right?
But the fact they say, "Can you?" Like, well, I'm going to give it a shot.
And then in the midst of all that, right? That's what's happening in horror. It felt like this movie comes in that's wildly fun, has a great emotional base, amazing fucking creature work,
great
and
cast.
just transported me back to the movies that made me fall in love with horror.
I agree.
And that's why I think this movie, I wish it was more profoundly loved. And I think maybe as time has gone on, it is. But like, here's something wild. When we were looking for it today, I don't own it on disc, so I was like, surely this will be on one of the 12 streaming sites I pay for.
I tried to find it.
None of those sites.
I had to rent it on Amazon.
Yeah, they never paid to have Slither.
Yeah, Shudder. Like, I was amazed didn't have it.
I mean, whatever site that was on, I was like, you'll get, because that's the thing now. These older movies like that kind of got lost, they can get that big new life, like something on Netflix, right? You put it on Netflix, so many fucking people can see it again or for the first time and re-fall in love with
especially as it trends. Like, most people like will say like, oh, there's a lot of people liking this, maybe there's something to it, and they'll watch it, and it just keeps growing. It snowballs. But yeah, if you make somebody pay for it on Amazon, it's not going to catch on. Well,
because that's the people who already missed it or they never knew about it in the first place. And that's the problem with streaming sites too, is it just gets lost in, again, like there's like 25 movies that are something comes to Earth to take us over or eat us.
Yeah.
You know, I'll pick this one maybe, or I'll pick something else. And that's this movie. I really always hope it like gets the second life, and maybe it already has. I don't know.
I mean, if you look on like a lot of lists, like the best horror movies that you never saw, it's always on there. So like social media does help give it a little boost there, but I think you're right though. Like, as soon as you put something like that on like Hulu or Netflix, really Netflix, Hulu movies don't ever catch on. But,
I feel like they have so much TV and stuff.
Yeah,
all these sites. I feel like that's the thing though, right? I'd rather be instead of like when you go to a town and it's like, what's the best bar or what's the best bar that no one ever goes to?
Right.
I'd rather just be at the best bar and have the most people there enjoying my bar all the time. And that's where I want Slither to stop being on the you haven't seen
The best
this
bar
list
you haven't seen.
and just fucking be this is among the most fun horror movies you could ever watch list.
And plus,
that's what I want it to
motivate that type of movie to come back.
Yeah, and
because
I mean, as a guy who loves practical effects, I was like, this movie should be fucking held up high, man. Yeah, I don't know. I love everything about this movie.
No, and maybe there's a part of it is just like me and you. We grew up loving horror, so we inherently love that movie.
Yeah,
there's a decent amount of people like our age that grew up loving horror in that genre, but there's a lot of people that didn't.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think horror movie people, right, were like, I was like a metalhead kid.
Yeah.
And like punk rock kid and, horror movie. Like we had our little like, there's not as many of us, but we're really fucking into it, right? I was an anime. Like I pretty much was like, what are all of like the small niche things I can pigeonhole myself in as a high school kid? I'll take them all.
That nobody else likes, that is just going to completely isolate me and I'll have nothing to talk about.
Right, but that's fine. But like my friends who were like, oh yeah, we like, movies. Right, like we saw Ace Ventura, we like movies, and they would talk about it. But when I met another horror friend, you're like, "Fuck, we're like, yeah,
we got some shit to talk about
all day on this shit." And those people I know love Slither. I want it like the fucking Eater of Worlds to infect everyone else.
Right. Well, as I say, there's not too many people out there that had. I think we probably had the same childhood where we always have. We're that group that has that memory of the person behind the ticket booth giving your parents the evil look for taking you in to that theater. Like that's like a special type of upbringing.
My dad was just like, I want to watch it. And it's like, well, okay, I guess. I mean, that's probably why he left when I was young, right? He made a lot of bad decisions, right? But yeah, he'd just go to Videoland and be like, what do you guys want?
Yeah, that's exactly.
It's like, don't do that, right? Like asking, what do you want for dinner? I don't know, cocaine and razor blades. All right.
That's what you asked for.
Oh, what a scamp. All right, guys, that's it for Slither. Again, I hope you guys love this movie. If you just found it with us, that's fucking awesome. Help spread the word, infect everyone else. Please do the same for the Film Alchemist podcast. Give us a rating and review wherever you're listening to us now. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Nerd Alchemist, plural with an S at the end. Sorry, I almost messed that up. Find us on our social medias. On Twitter, we're at Film Alchemist 1. You can tell us what movies you'd like us to cover, things in theaters, themes, double features, people to have on the show, anything. We want to hear from you. And we'll be back momentarily with the Nick Cage, Richard Stanley, Lovecraftian, epic fucking fever dream, Color Out of Space. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Thanks for joining me, Mike.
Thanks for having me.
See you soon.